Hello everybody and welcome to another puzzle challenge video. This is Ryan Murphy with chessuniversity.com, and today we have our last puzzle of this week, so it's supposed to be again in the difficulty category for advanced players, and the position in front of us is black to play and win. There are actually two very strong moves in this position for black. Everything else is leaving black with still a better position because two bishops and active pieces and all that, but looking for the most direct way to a win here. And as usual, we're going to rewind to the start of the game and see how we reached this position. This was a game played on chess.com in Blitz between Bakchi and Wang. And it was a very interesting game, and of course this position is very, very exciting. And as usual, as we zoom back to the beginning, if you see the correct answer, make sure you post on the official webpage where this puzzle will be hosted, and I'll put the link for that in the description of the YouTube video. So check that one out. Alright, so this game began as a Sicilian with e6. g3 is a very nice system in general against e6, or at least it can be. Usually white starts by playing d4 and then g6, g3 later, but okay. Here black plays d5 immediately, which is usually a pretty good recipe, and then d4. And you can often get this type of formation in the French, although in that case, this pawn's back on g2. So it should be reasonable for black. Alright, so takes, bishop takes c5. This bishop kind of got to develop for free, which is nice for black. Bishop g2, knight f6, castles, castles. So both sides just completing development here. White is going to try to put pressure against this pawn on d5, which is isolated, but black has very free development, so it's not going to be that easy for white. Bishop g4 played, h3, and bishop h5. So now this bishop has gotten stronger. Every time these pawns have to move forward, they're weakening squares. That's true of any pawn move. But especially now in the future, black's going to have the option of putting something on g3 now that there's no pawn on h2 to protect that square, and this f2 pawn is pinned. So either white's going to have to move their king, or there's going to be some weird tactics against these guys. It's a small hint. All right, so knight bd2, queen d7, knight to b3, chasing the bishop. Bishop goes back. Bishop f4, rook e8, queen d3. Again, there's nothing too fancy about a lot of these moves. Black is just centralizing, and both sides are just getting the pieces out. Bishop g6 to hit the queen. Queen back to d1. Surely there's a better square than undeveloping the queen, maybe even queen d2. One of the main problems for white here is this bishop doesn't have a great home. If it goes to e3, it's going to get swapped immediately, and white's king's going to get weak. And doesn't really do much on g5, and yeah, it just doesn't have a great place to be. That's one of white's problems. The other problem is that white's rooks aren't going to be influencing the center as much as black's. Alright. It's important here that black doesn't take on d4. Taking on d4 would be a pretty large mistake, which would pretty much give white at least an okay, if not better, position. Because now, they plant this knight here. The knight on b3 was kind of silly. It didn't have much of a function. Now the knights aren't redundant anymore. This knight blocks this bishop on the strong diagonal. And yeah, black's activity gets reduced with every trade. In general, when you have the IQP, you don't want to trade too many minor pieces unless you're achieving something concrete. All right, so knight e5 played, avoiding that trade. Rook e1 and knight d3, very strong square for this knight, putting pressure in all sorts of places. So black has to trade. White has to trade on e8 with black. Black then wins the open file. Is threatening rook e1 check, which would win the queen. So white has to move the queen again. And now h6. I mean, basically any move is good here. I think taking the bishop right away makes a ton of sense. Winning the bishop pair, but h6 is fine. Knight to c1's a move that white goes for. Not really sure about this move. Blocks the rook. There's no way that black's going to trade on c1 and help the rook develop. That's just never going to happen. And after knight takes f4, this knight's just kind of awkward on c1. So that move didn't help white's cause too much. Now bishop c7 was played. Rook e1 seems very annoying. I wonder how that would have been met, because in this case, this pin on the first rank to the rook is going to end up being very unpleasant. Anyway, the queen went back to d2, which covers the e1 square. Now knight e4. Yeah, black's just enjoying two bishops here and is able to poke around and make lots of threats. And now once white corrects the knight and puts it back on b3, there's the tactic that we started the video with. But in this position, I'll point out that the knight on b3, like I said earlier, really the only case in which it becomes a good piece is if it goes to d4, and that's not going to happen because this knight would have to move first. So if we go back, like, we could find a better square for this knight. I mean, yeah, either of the other two legal squares would have been better, I think. Knight d3 is pretty solid, having good control over the center. Maybe even knight e2. The knight e2 looks a little bit awkward. It has the same problem as b3 in the sense that it still just wants to go to d4. Putting it on f4 feels slightly artificial, but is maybe possible. Anyway, after knight b3, white's completely toast because of a nice attacking combination from black. So hopefully you guys will spot it, and I will see everybody tomorrow as we reset with the beginner level puzzles. Thanks for watching.